Mariana had always dreamed of living in the heart of the city. After years of saving and searching, she finally found the perfect apartment in a historic building that combined modern amenities with old-world charm. The high ceilings, large windows, and intricate moldings made it a place she was excited to call home. Moving into apartment 12, she felt a sense of accomplishment and anticipation for the new chapter ahead. The building itself was nestled among bustling streets, yet offered a quiet refuge from the chaos outside. Mariana appreciated the convenience of nearby cafes, shops, and parks, but what truly captivated her was the sense of community among the residents. Everyone seemed friendly, greeting each other with warm smiles and occasional small talk in the hallways. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other by name, and Mariana looked forward to becoming part of that close-knit group. However, there was one apartment that stood out for all the wrong reasons, apartment 13. It was perpetually dark, with shutters always drawn and the entrance seemingly abandoned. The building's history hinted that the previous occupants had left abruptly, leaving the unit untouched for years. The building manager often mentioned that apartment 13 was uninhabitable due to structural issues, but no one seemed to know the full story. Despite her curiosity, Mariana respected the manager's explanations and avoided dwelling on the mysterious unit. In the first few weeks, Mariana settled into her routine, enjoying evenings curled up with books and weekends exploring the neighborhood. But as time passed, subtle disturbances began to disrupt her peace. Late at night, she would hear faint sounds coming from the direction of apartment 13. Soft footsteps, indistinct murmurs, and the occasional creak of old wood. At first, she dismissed them as noises from the building settling or perhaps the echoes of past residents. Yet, there was something unnerving about the consistency and variety of the sounds. One evening, after a particularly long day, Mariana decided to investigate. She approached the door of apartment 13, half expecting it to be as vacant as the manager had said. To her surprise, the door was slightly ajar, which was unusual given the strict rules about access to that unit. Her heart raced as she hesitated, debating whether to push the door open or retreat to the safety of her own apartment. The temptation to uncover the truth was too strong, and with a deep breath, she gently knocked. There was no response. Taking another step, Mariana pushed the door open further, revealing an empty, dusty room. Cobwebs adorned the corners, and sunlight filtered through the grimy windows, casting eerie shadows on the floor. She scanned the space, finding nothing out of place except for an old, worn-out armchair that seemed out of context. The air felt heavy, carrying a faint, unpleasant odor that made her wrinkle her nose in discomfort. Mariana quickly closed the door, her curiosity only partially satisfied. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something unseen was watching her. As she retreated to her apartment, the noises from apartment 13 seemed to grow louder, as if acknowledging her intrusion. That night, sleep eluded her as she lay in bed, listening to the unsettling sounds and wondering what secrets the neighboring unit held. Determined to understand what was happening, Mariana knew she couldn't ignore the disturbances any longer. Little did she realize that her quest for answers would lead her down a path filled with mystery and fear, challenging everything she thought she knew about her new home. The days following Mariana's unsettling visit to apartment 13 were marked by an uneasy calm. She tried to push the incident to the back of her mind, focusing instead on settling into her new home. However, the strange noises persisted, weaving themselves into the fabric of her daily life. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sounds would begin anew. Soft footsteps pacing back and forth, the faint murmur of indistinct voices, and the occasional, inexplicable thud that seemed to reverberate through the thin walls of the building. Mariana found herself increasingly on edge. She would lie awake at night, listening to the disturbances, her imagination painting vivid, often terrifying scenarios of what might be happening in the abandoned apartment. The noises were never constant, but their unpredictability kept her in a state of perpetual anxiety. She began to notice subtle changes in her own behavior, feeling more restless and distracted than usual. Her friends commented on her distracted demeanor, but she brushed off their concerns, unwilling to reveal the true source of her distress. One evening, as Mariana was preparing dinner, she caught a whiff of a foul odor that seemed to emanate from the direction of apartment 13. It was a pungent, sulfur-like smell that made her gag involuntarily. She looked around her own apartment, ensuring that the source wasn't within her space. The smell was unmistakably coming from next door. Her stomach churned, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of dread wash over her. Determined to find some rational explanation, Mariana decided to investigate further. She approached the hallway where apartment 13 was located, her footsteps echoing softly against the tiled floor. The door to the infamous unit remained closed, just as the building manager had always said it was. She knocked again, her hand trembling slightly. This time, there was a faint sound of movement from within, but no one answered. Mariana took a deep breath, steeling herself against the unease that threatened to overwhelm her. She reached out to open the door, half expecting it to remain shut. To her surprise, the door creaked open just a crack, revealing a glimpse of the dark interior. The hallway beyond was bathed in shadows, and the air seemed to grow colder as she peered inside. The sight of the empty room only deepened the mystery, leaving her with more questions than answers. As she stood there, contemplating her next move, Mariana heard a distinct sound, a soft whisper that seemed to come from within the apartment. It was unintelligible, but the tone was unmistakably pleading. Her heart pounded in her chest as she stepped back, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. She couldn't explain why, but a surge of empathy compelled her to help, despite the growing fear. Over the next few nights, the disturbances intensified. The noises became more frequent and varied, and the odors more potent. Mariana began to document each incident, keeping a journal where she recorded the times, types of sounds, and any other peculiar occurrences. Her entries grew longer and more detailed, reflecting her increasing obsession with uncovering the truth behind apartment 13. One night, as a heavy storm raged outside, the building seemed to come alive with the eerie sounds from next door. The wind howled through the corridors, amplifying every creak and groan. Mariana sat on her bed, listening intently, her flashlight in hand. Suddenly, the whispers became louder, almost audible, and the temperature in her apartment dropped sharply. She wrapped herself in a blanket, trying to steady her breathing as the room seemed to close in around her. In the midst of the storm, Mariana made a decision. She couldn't continue living in fear, not knowing what or who was in apartment 13. The unanswered questions gnawed at her, driving her to seek out the truth, no matter the cost. With a mix of determination and trepidation, she began to plan her next steps, unaware of the deeper mysteries and dangers that awaited her in the shadowed confines of the neighboring apartment. Mariana's quest for answers was just beginning, setting the stage for the unsettling discoveries and confrontations that would soon turn her new home into a battleground between the known and the unknown. The unsettling sounds from apartment 13 were only the beginning of Mariana's growing unease. As days turned into weeks, another disturbing element made its presence known: foul odors that seemed to emanate from the mysterious unit. It started subtly, with a barely noticeable stench wafting through her door late one evening. At first, she dismissed it as a lingering smell from her neighbor's cooking or perhaps a malfunctioning garbage disposal. However, the odors soon became impossible to ignore. Mariana began to associate the unpleasant smell specifically with apartment 13. Each time she noticed the odor, it was accompanied by a sense of dread that settled in her stomach. The scent was acrid and sulfur-like, making her wrinkle her nose in discomfort and occasionally causing her to gag. It lingered in the air long after she had moved away from the hallway, seeping into her own apartment through the thin walls. Determined to uncover the source, Mariana decided to investigate further. She started by observing the times when the odors were strongest. Most often, the smell was most intense late at night, coinciding with the eerie noises that had already been plaguing her. She suspected that whatever was happening in apartment 13 was somehow connected to both the sounds and the smells. One evening, Armed with a small notebook and a determination to get to the bottom of the mystery, Mariana decided to follow the odor. She carefully opened her door, ensuring that she wouldn't alert any of her neighbors, and stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The air was thick with the unpleasant scent, making it difficult to breathe comfortably. She took slow, measured steps towards apartment 13, her heart pounding in her chest. As she approached the infamous door, the smell seemed to grow stronger, pressing against her senses. Mariana reached out and hesitated before knocking, her hand trembling slightly. The door remained closed, just as the building manager had always said. Frustrated and more determined than ever, she decided to peer through the small window beside the door. What she saw only deepened the mystery. The apartment appeared completely empty, with no signs of recent habitation. Dust covered every surface, and the air felt stagnant, almost as if time had stood still inside. Mariana leaned in closer, trying to catch any hint of movement or activity that might explain the odors. Suddenly, the smell intensified, and she felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She pulled back abruptly, gagging at the overwhelming stench. The window showed nothing out of the ordinary, but the persistent odor suggested that something was very wrong within the walls of apartment 13. Determined not to be deterred by the unpleasant smell, Mariana decided to take more proactive steps. She began researching the history of the building, hoping to find any clues about apartment 13's past. She visited the local library and scoured old newspaper archives, discovering that the unit had been abandoned after a series of unexplained incidents years ago. Previous tenants had reported strange noises, sudden temperature drops, and the pervasive foul odors, much like what she was experiencing now. The building manager had always brushed off these reports, insisting that apartment 13 was structurally unsound and therefore uninhabitable. Armed with this new information, Mariana felt a mix of frustration and determination. The historical accounts mirrored her own experiences, reinforcing the idea that something beyond the ordinary was occurring in apartment 13. She couldn't ignore the connection between the smells and the disturbances any longer. The mystery of the odors became a driving force behind her quest for answers, pushing her to delve deeper into the unknown. One night, as Mariana sat in her apartment, she decided to set up a small experiment. She placed an open container near her door, hoping to capture some of the odor's source. She left it overnight, meticulously noting the time and her observations in her journal. The next morning, she discovered that the container had absorbed a significant amount of the foul smell, confirming that the odor was indeed concentrated near the entrance to apartment 13. This discovery only heightened Mariana's curiosity. She began to consider more invasive methods of investigation, such as breaking into the apartment or seeking out professional help. However, the fear of what she might uncover held her back. The combination of the persistent odors and the eerie noises created a pervasive sense of unease that made her second-guess every step she took towards uncovering the truth. As days passed, the odors became a constant presence in Mariana's life, infiltrating her home and mind. She struggled to maintain her daily routines, her thoughts consumed by the mystery next door. The once charming apartment building now felt like a place of hidden horrors, with apartment 13 standing as a silent sentinel guarding its dark secrets. Mariana knew that she couldn't continue living in this state of fear and uncertainty forever. The only way to reclaim her peace of mind was to confront the mystery head-on, no matter how terrifying the truth might be. Mariana's determination solidified, setting the stage for the next steps in her journey to uncover the secrets of apartment 13. The combination of strange noises and foul odors created a compelling and terrifying mystery that she was now fully committed to solving, unaware of the deeper and more sinister forces at play. Mariana's determination to uncover the truth behind apartment 13 only grew stronger as the days passed. The persistent noises and foul odors had become an inescapable part of her daily life, seeping into her thoughts and disrupting her peace. She knew that to find answers, she needed to dig deeper into the building's history and the stories of those who had lived there before her. Her first step was to approach her neighbors. Mariana believed that someone in the building might hold the key to the mystery of apartment 13. She began with Mrs. Alvarez, an elderly woman who had lived in the building for over 30 years. Mariana found her in the lobby one afternoon, tending to her small collection of potted plants. "Excuse me, Mrs. Alvarez," Mariana began hesitantly. "Do you know anything about apartment 13? Mrs. Alvarez looked up, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Apartment 13, you say? It's been empty for as long as I can remember. Strange things happen around there, though. People say they hear noises and catch odd smells, just like you." Mariana pressed further. "Have there ever been any incidents or reasons why it's been abandoned?" The older woman sighed, her expression turning wistful. "There was an unfortunate incident years ago. A family lived there, parents and 2 children. One night a fire broke out. No one knows exactly how it started, but the whole building was evacuated. The family never returned, and apartment 13 has been empty ever since. Some say their spirits never left." Mariana felt a chill run down her spine. A tragic event like a fire could explain the lingering odors and noises, but it also hinted at something more sinister. Determined to learn more, she thanked Mrs. Alvarez and continued her inquiries. Next, she spoke with Mr. Thompson, a middle-aged man who managed the building before the current manager took over. Mr. Thompson was a reserved individual, but Mariana sensed a flicker of empathy in his eyes. "Mr. Thompson, do you know anything about what happened in apartment 13? She asked. He hesitated before answering. "The fire was a terrible night. The family, they didn't survive. Since then, we've tried to keep apartment 13 sealed off. The manager insists it's for safety reasons, but some believe it's to prevent any disturbances from the spirits of the family." Mariana's mind raced with the implications. If the spirits were indeed lingering, it explained the supernatural occurrences she was experiencing. But why would the manager keep apartment 13 sealed off and insist it was structurally unsound? Determined to find out more, Mariana decided to access the building's official records. She visited the local municipal office, navigating through piles of paperwork and old archives. After hours of searching, she finally located the building's inspection reports and historical records. The documents confirmed the tragic fire incident, but there was something else that caught her attention. Several years after the fire, there were multiple applications for renovations and repairs on apartment 13, all of which were abruptly halted without explanation. It seemed the building manager had been trying to address the issues for years, but had never succeeded. Armed with this new information, Mariana returned to her apartment, her mind buzzing with questions. Why had the renovations never been completed? What was so significant about apartment 13 that kept it sealed off for so long? That night, as Mariana sat by her window, she reviewed her findings. The incomplete renovation suggested that someone or something was preventing access to the apartment. It was as if the building itself was protecting the secrets of apartment 13. The connection between the tragic fire and the current disturbances became clearer, but the mystery deepened. Determined to push forward, Mariana decided to explore the area surrounding apartment 13 more thoroughly. She spent evenings walking the hallways, searching for hidden passages or forgotten entrances that might lead her closer to the truth. Her efforts, however, were met with frustration. Every attempt to enter or get closer to apartment 13 was thwarted by locked doors, blocked stairways, and an unspoken barrier that seemed to repel her presence. One particularly quiet evening, Mariana noticed a faint outline near the base of the staircase leading to apartment 13. It was barely visible, almost like a shadow cast by the dim hallway light. Curiosity piqued, she approached cautiously, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she drew nearer, the outline began to take shape, a small, concealed door partially hidden behind a row of old, dusty boxes. Her pulse quickened. This was a discovery that could change everything. Taking a deep breath, Mariana reached out and pushed the boxes aside, revealing the door. It was old and weathered, with a rusty handle that creaked loudly as she touched it. Her hand trembled as she turned the knob, the door swinging open to reveal a narrow, dark passageway. A wave of apprehension washed over her, but so did a sense of triumph. She had finally found a possible way into the heart of the mystery. Gathering her courage, Mariana decided to take the next step. She lit a flashlight and peered into the darkness, the beam cutting through the shadows. The passageway was cramped and filled with cobwebs, but it appeared to lead directly into the basement of the building. Mariana knew she needed to be careful, but the urge to uncover the truth was too strong to ignore. She descended the narrow stairs, each step echoing ominously in the confined space. At the bottom, she found herself in a small, cluttered room. Old furniture, stacks of boxes, and remnants of past lives filled the space. In the center stood a large, antique mirror, its surface dusty and smudged. As Mariana approached, she felt a sudden drop in temperature, her breath visible in the cold air. She wiped the mirror clean, revealing her reflection. But something was wrong. Behind her reflection, faint images began to form. Ghostly figures of the family who had perished in the fire, their eyes vacant and sorrowful. Mariana froze, the realization hitting her that the spirits were not just lingering noises and smells, but active presences within the building. Her heart raced as she backed away, the room feeling increasingly oppressive. The whispers from above seemed to echo down the passageway, merging with the sorrowful sighs of the apparitions in the mirror. Mariana knew she had to leave, but the connection she felt to the spirits compelled her to stay and understand their plight. As she turned to leave, a sudden gust of wind extinguished her flashlight, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as she fumbled to relight it, the room feeling like it was closing in around her. When the light finally flickered back on, the mirror was gone, replaced by an empty wall. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, but the sense of being watched remained. Mariana hurried back up the stairs, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. The spirits of the family were still trapped, their unfinished business keeping apartment 13 alive in a haunting state. She realized that to move forward, she would need to help them find peace, but she had no idea how to begin. As she returned to her apartment, the weight of the discovery settled heavily on her shoulders. The mystery of apartment 13 was far deeper and more personal than she had ever imagined. Mariana knew that her journey was just beginning, and the path ahead would be fraught with challenges and fears she had yet to face. Determined to help the restless spirits and uncover the full truth, Mariana prepared herself for the next steps. She understood that solving the mystery would require not only courage, but also a willingness to confront the darkest aspects of the building's history. With resolve in her heart, she looked forward to the revelations that awaited her, unaware of the true extent of the dangers lurking in the shadows of apartment 13. After the chilling encounter in the basement, Mariana felt a mix of fear and determination. The apparitions of the family in the mirror had left an indelible mark on her mind, compelling her to seek answers beyond the surface-level disturbances. She knew that to truly understand what was happening in apartment 13, she needed concrete evidence. The unsettling noises and foul odors were too persistent to ignore, and the fragmented stories from her neighbors hinted at a deeper, more troubling mystery. Mariana sat at her kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows across her notes and research. She reviewed the information she had gathered so far: the tragic fire, the abandoned renovations, and the apparitions she had witnessed. Each piece of the puzzle only raised more questions, and the lack of clear answers left her feeling increasingly uneasy. Determined to move forward, she realized that passive observation was no longer enough. She needed to take active steps to document the supernatural occurrences. Her first thought was to install cameras. Mariana had always been somewhat tech-savvy, and the idea of setting up a surveillance system seemed like a practical way to monitor apartment 13 without directly confronting whatever presence lingered there. She researched affordable security cameras online, opting for models that could be discreetly placed and accessed remotely. By the next day, she had all the necessary equipment and began planning the optimal setup. Mariana decided to focus on key areas where the disturbances were most frequent. She positioned cameras in her own apartment, aiming them towards the hallway and directly at the door of apartment 13. Additionally, she placed a few cameras in the common areas of the building, such as the lobby and the stairwell leading to her unit. This comprehensive coverage would ensure that she could capture any unusual activity from multiple angles and at different times. Setting up the cameras was a meticulous process. Mariana spent several hours mounting each device, ensuring that they were hidden from plain sight, but still provided clear views of their designated areas. She tested each camera to confirm that the angles were correct and that the footage was being recorded properly. Once satisfied with the setup, she connected the system to her laptop, configuring it to send her real-time alerts whenever motion was detected. With the cameras in place, Mariana felt a sense of cautious optimism. She hoped that the footage would provide the answers she so desperately sought, whether they confirmed her suspicions of a supernatural presence or offered a more rational explanation. As night fell, she settled into her routine, the hum of the city outside her windows now accompanied by the silent watch of her new surveillance system. That night, the disturbances began as usual. The familiar sounds of footsteps and whispers echoed from apartment 13, and the foul odor seeped into her living space. Mariana kept a low profile, pretending to be engrossed in a book while her cameras silently recorded every moment. Hours passed with no significant events, but Mariana remained vigilant, her eyes occasionally flicking to the screen displaying the live feed from the hallway. Around midnight, the atmosphere in the building shifted. The usual background noises were overtaken by a sudden, intense stillness. Mariana's heart quickened as she watched the footage, sensing that something was about to happen. The camera focused on the door of apartment 13 showed subtle movements, shadows dancing behind the curtains and objects seemingly shifting on their own. The temperature in her apartment dropped noticeably, her breath visible in the cold air as she watched the screen. A loud bang reverberated through the hallway, followed by the unmistakable sound of glass shattering. Mariana's pulse raced as she leaned closer to the monitor, her eyes wide with fear and anticipation. The footage revealed a figure standing motionless in the doorway of apartment 13, its presence both eerie and unsettling. The figure remained silent, staring directly at the camera before slowly fading away into the darkness. Shaken but resolute, Mariana knew that the evidence was undeniable. The footage confirmed that something or someone was indeed inhabiting apartment 13, defying the building manager's claims of it being empty. She felt a surge of urgency to uncover the truth, realizing that the spirits of the past were not only present, but also actively interacting with her environment. The next morning, Mariana reviewed the footage in detail, pausing and replaying the moments that had transpired during the night. Each replay deepened her understanding of the situation, revealing patterns and behaviors that suggested the presence was intelligent and aware of her surveillance efforts. Determined to take the next step, she decided to share her findings with someone who could help her make sense of the supernatural elements at play. Mariana reached out to a local paranormal investigator she had heard about through online forums. Dr. Elias Hart, known for his rational approach to unexplained phenomena, agreed to meet her and review the evidence. With the footage saved and her notes organized, Mariana felt a glimmer of hope that professional insight might provide the answers she needed. As she prepared for the meeting, Mariana couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The disturbances seemed to grow more intense, as if the presence in apartment 13 was aware of her attempts to document and understand it. Despite the mounting fear, her resolve only strengthened. She was determined to bring peace to the restless spirits and uncover the hidden truths of apartment 13, no matter the cost. With the decision to monitor the situation firmly in place, Mariana took the first steps toward unraveling the mystery that had turned her new home into a place of fear and uncertainty. The cameras had captured undeniable evidence, but she knew that the journey ahead would require more courage and perseverance than she had ever imagined. The following day dawned gray and overcast, the sky heavy with unspoken threats of rain. Mariana woke with a lingering sense of unease, the events of the previous night replaying in her mind. The footage she had captured was undeniable, yet it raised more questions than it answered. Determined to seek clarity, she prepared for the meeting with Dr. Elias Hart, the local paranormal investigator. Dr. Hart arrived in the early afternoon, his presence calm and composed, contrasting Mariana's jittery anticipation. He was a middle-aged man with a thoughtful demeanor, wearing a simple yet professional outfit that suggested both practicality and seriousness. After exchanging brief pleasantries, Mariana led him to her apartment, where she had meticulously organized her notes and set up her laptop to display the captured footage. As they sat together, Dr. Hart reviewed the video, his eyes narrowing as he scrutinized each frame. The figure in the doorway of apartment 13 stood still, its presence both haunting and enigmatic. "This is fascinating," he remarked, his voice steady. "What you've captured here is rare. It suggests an intelligent presence, not just random paranormal activity." Mariana nodded, her heart still racing from the night's events. "I don't understand how it's possible. The building manager said apartment 13 has been empty for years, but the camera clearly shows something or someone in there." Dr. Hart leaned back, contemplating the implications. "There are a few possibilities. It could be residual energy from the tragic fire, manifesting as apparitions. Alternatively, it might be an entity that has attached itself to the building. We'll need to conduct a more thorough investigation to determine the nature of this presence." Mariana felt a flicker of hope mixed with apprehension. "What do we do next?" Dr. Hart outlined a plan. "We'll start by conducting an electromagnetic field, EMF, survey of both your apartment and apartment 13. High EMF readings can indicate the presence of spirits or other entities. Additionally, we'll perform a thermal imaging scan to detect any unusual temperature fluctuations that might not be visible to the naked eye." Over the next few days, Dr. Hart and Mariana worked together, setting up specialized equipment throughout her apartment and the hallway leading to apartment 13. The process was meticulous, each device placed with care to ensure comprehensive coverage. Mariana found herself both anxious and excited, eager to uncover the truth behind the disturbances. One evening, as they conducted the EMF survey, the readings began to spike without any apparent cause. The devices buzzed and flickered, the numbers climbing rapidly. Dr. Hart exchanged a concerned glance with Mariana. "This is unusual. It suggests a significant presence." They moved to the hallway camera feeds, watching intently as the figures appeared intermittently in apartment 13. Each apparition seemed more defined than the last, their movements more deliberate. The temperature in Mariana's apartment also plummeted suddenly, frost forming on the windows despite the mild weather outside. As they continued their investigation, Mariana noticed something strange in the footage. Reflections in the windows of nearby apartments that didn't match the actual inhabitants. Faces that were not present in the room stared back at her, eyes hollow and expressions sorrowful. "Are those other spirits?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Dr. Hart examined the reflections closely. "It's possible. These could be residual echoes of past events or other entities bound to the building. We need to consider the building's history more deeply." Their research led them to uncover more about the building's past. They discovered that apartment 13 had been the site of several unexplained disappearances before the tragic fire that had led to its abandonment. Reports from former residents mentioned strange lights, eerie sounds, and feelings of being watched. The more they delved into the history, the more it became clear that apartment 13 held dark secrets that went beyond a single tragic event. One night, as a storm raged outside, the disturbances reached a new level of intensity. The hallway lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Mariana and Dr. Hart watched in silent anticipation as the cameras captured a series of rapid, almost frantic movements within apartment 13. Objects began to move on their own. Furniture shifted, pictures fell from the walls, and the oppressive odor filled the air, more potent than ever. Suddenly, the footage showed a figure materializing in the center of the room, its form more solid and defined. It raised its hands, and the room seemed to pulse with an unseen energy. The temperature in Mariana's apartment dropped further, her breath now a steady stream of visible vapor. Dr. Hart's eyes widened as he realized the presence was becoming more assertive, more tangible. "This is beyond what I've seen before," he murmured. "We need to proceed with caution." Mariana felt a surge of determination. "We have to help them. They're still trapped here. Dr. Hart nodded, his resolve matching hers. Agreed. We need to communicate with whatever is inhabiting apartment 13 and understand its intentions. It might be seeking closure or trying to convey a message. As the storm continued to howl outside, Mariana and Dr. Hart prepared for the next phase of their investigation. They set up additional recording devices and began crafting a plan to establish contact with the presence in apartment 13. The air was thick with tension, every crack of thunder and flash of lightning heightening the sense of impending revelation. Mariana felt the weight of the building's history pressing down on her, but she remained steadfast. The journey to uncover the truth was becoming increasingly perilous, but her determination to bring peace to the restless spirits and reclaim her sanctuary fueled her courage. As she glanced at Dr. Hart, she knew that together, they were on the brink of uncovering secrets that had long been buried in the shadows of apartment 13. The night stretched on, filled with moments of fear and anticipation, as Mariana and Dr. Hart stood united against the unknown forces that sought to keep their secrets hidden. The mysteries of apartment 13 were far from resolved, and the path ahead promised to be fraught with even deeper and more unsettling discoveries. The storm outside had not relented, its relentless pounding against the windows a constant reminder of the turmoil brewing within the building. Mariana sat in her apartment, the weight of the previous night's discoveries pressing heavily on her shoulders. Dr. Hart had returned to his office, leaving Mariana alone with her thoughts and the ever-present disturbances emanating from apartment 13. The flickering lights and sudden temperature drops were no longer mere annoyances. They were signs that something was actively trying to communicate. Determined to bridge the gap between the living and the restless spirits, Mariana and Dr. Hart decided to hold a seance in her apartment. They believed that direct communication might provide the answers they desperately sought. The preparation was meticulous. They arranged candles in a circle, their soft glow casting eerie shadows across the room. Dr. Hart set up additional recording devices, hoping to capture any subtle signs of paranormal activity. Mariana felt a mix of fear and anticipation, her heart racing as she took her place at the center of the circle. As they began the seance, Dr. Hart led them through a series of calming breaths, urging them to open their minds to the unseen presence. The air in the room grew thick with tension, the candle flames dancing as if reacting to an unseen force. Mariana felt a chill run down her spine, the temperature dropping noticeably. She glanced at Dr. Hart, whose expression remained calm yet focused, ready to guide her through the unknown. Spirits of apartment 13, Dr. Hart began, his voice steady but gentle. We seek to understand and to help. Please communicate with us. For a moment, there was only silence, the storm outside seeming to hold its breath. Then, the candles flickered violently, their flames stretching and twisting unnaturally. Mariana's breath caught in her throat as she felt a presence fill the room, an invisible force pressing down upon them. The recordings began to pick up faint whispers, indistinct but undeniably there, echoing the sorrow and pain that had plagued the spirits for so long. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness as the candles extinguished themselves, leaving Mariana and Dr. Hart in the oppressive blackness. Panic surged through Mariana, her mind racing with fear. Dr. Hart, what's happening? She whispered, her voice trembling. Before Dr. Hart could respond, a cold wind swept through the room, causing the candles to relight themselves briefly before extinguishing once more. The temperature dropped even further, Mariana's breath, now a visible mist in the frigid air. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the very walls were closing in around her. A loud crash echoed from the direction of apartment 13, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Mariana's heart pounded in her chest as she and Dr. Hart exchanged uneasy glances. The seance had awakened something powerful, something not ready to be placated or understood. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, their tones shifting from sorrow to anger. Why are you here? A voice seemed to demand, the words barely audible, but filled with emotion. Mariana felt tears welling up in her eyes, the pain and frustration of the spirits seeping into her very being. "What do you want from us?" Dr. Hart remained composed, though his eyes betrayed his concern. "We want to help you find peace," he replied, his voice gentle yet firm. "Please tell us how we can assist you." The room remained silent for a tense moment before the candles flared up once more, their light revealing the outline of a figure standing at the edge of the circle. The apparition was faint, its features blurred and indistinct, but the sadness in its eyes was unmistakable. Mariana felt a surge of empathy, her fear momentarily overridden by a deep desire to help. "Help us," the spirit whispered, its voice filled with longing. "We cannot leave." Mariana's mind raced, trying to comprehend the apparition's plea. "What happened here?" she asked softly. "How can we help you move on?" The spirit's form began to shift, the edges wavering like mist. Images flashed before Mariana's eyes. Scenes of the tragic fire, the family's desperate attempts to escape, the overwhelming smoke and flames that had consumed their lives. She could feel their fear, their pain, as if she were living those moments herself. "We were trapped," the spirit continued, the words barely more than a breath. "The fire took everything. We cannot find peace without closure." Mariana's heart ached for the lost family. "What can we do to help you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her. The apparition reached out a translucent hand, pointing towards the hallway leading to apartment 13. "Find the truth," it whispered. "Reveal what was hidden. Only then can we be free." As the spirit's form began to dissolve, the room returned to its previous stillness. The candles extinguished once more, leaving Mariana and Dr. Hart in darkness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, replaced by a sense of purpose. Mariana knew that uncovering the truth behind the fire was the key to helping the restless spirits find peace. Determined to honor the spirit's plea, Mariana and Dr. Hart delved deeper into the building's history. They revisited old records, interviewed longtime residents, and pieced together the fragmented stories that had been buried over the years. Each revelation brought them closer to understanding the true events that had led to the tragic fire and the lingering presence of the family in apartment 13. One evening, while sifting through old newspaper clippings, Mariana stumbled upon a report detailing a series of suspicious circumstances surrounding the fire. There were inconsistencies in the official accounts, unexplained gaps in the timeline, and hints of foul play that had never been thoroughly investigated. Her heart raced as she realized that uncovering these truths was not only crucial for the spirits, but also for bringing justice to the forgotten victims. As Mariana and Dr. Hart prepared to confront the hidden truths, the disturbances in the building intensified. The whispers grew louder, the shadows darker, and the presence more aggressive, as if resisting their efforts to uncover the truth. Mariana felt a growing sense of urgency, knowing that time was running out to help the spirits find peace before the darkness consumed them entirely. With each step closer to the truth, Mariana could feel the line between the living and the dead blurring, the building itself seeming to come alive with secrets yearning to be revealed. The confrontation with the unknown was no longer a distant possibility. It was an imminent reality, one that would test Mariana's courage and resilience in ways she had never imagined. As she looked towards apartment 13, now a beacon of mystery and sorrow, Mariana knew that the final pieces of the puzzle were within reach. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but her determination to bring peace to the restless spirits and uncover the hidden truths had never been stronger. The true confrontation with the unknown was about to begin, and Mariana was ready to face whatever horrors awaited her in the shadows of apartment 13.